Morning, everyone. Welcome to our Friday, March 17th Committee on Housing meeting. We're in room 312 and also online. We have a pretty nice, not too bad agenda today. We do have a 2-minute time limit per testifier, but you know, if you have more to say, we were a little bit flexible as long as we don't have too many people and we can get through our agenda. So first up, we have HB 340 relating to housing. This relates to the Hawaii Public Housing Authority. Vice Chair for testimony.
Hakeem, HPHA.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Hakeem Wansafi, Housing Authority. We stand on our testimony in support. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. AARP Hawaii, on Zoom.
Good morning, Chair Hashimoto, members of the committee. Audrey Suganakagawa, Advocacy Director for AARP Hawaii, and we stand on our testimony in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Catholic Charities Hawaii.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Betty Lou Larson, representing Catholic Charities Hawaii. And you have our written testimony, but just want to comment that this is a really, if not creative way, an essential way to really produce housing fast. Because if we can repair these units, we can get over 200 people, 200 families in their homes. And as you know, Hawaii Public Housing Authority has a priority for homeless people, so that some homeless people will probably, hopefully, get into some of those 200 units and really make a difference in our homeless problem. So thank you very much for listening to our testimony.
Thank you. The Kapuna Caucus of DPH. Gail Larkowitz, individual in support. Will Karen, individual in support. Kevin Johnson, individual in support. Anna Filler, individual in support. Are there any other individuals wishing to testify on this bill, SB 340? Seeing none, Chair.
Members, any question? SB 340, Rep. Onishi.
Chair for Hawaii Housing. So this bill appropriates funding for 2 years, and the requested funding was $20,200,000.
That's for the first biennium year to cover approximately 262 units at about $85,000 repair per unit. In addition to that, the additional money will be used for using some of those units, make them accessible, ADA accessible, so we are conforming to the federal law.
So with that $200 million in the first year of the biennium, $20 million in the first year of the biennium, you're intending to be able to complete 255 homes, units?
Approximately 262 units.
Okay. And so why is the funding necessary for the second year?
Why is it? Oh, because at least 500 units become available each year due to vacancies, evictions, people leaving the program, or units become unsafe or unhealthy.
So how do you currently fund repair and maintenance for vacant units?
How do we what? Sorry?
How do you fund
through this
existing?
Through the legislature and also through the CFP money that we get from the federal government. We got approximately $14 million a year for CFP to do other projects.
Okay, and in previous years, you haven't gotten any money from the state?
We have, and we have spent it.
How much do you normally get?
Every year depends. I think last year we got 10 million. Last year, the year before that was similar. The highest we ever got from the state was about 93 million 12 years ago. And the funding from there just varies session to session.
So your estimate is about $80,000 per unit?
The proposal coming in as of last month, the average about $85,000 per unit.
To bring it back up to rentable standard?
Correct.
Even if it was previously rented?
If it was previously rented?
Yeah, if it was got vacated.
Yeah, no, thank you. So, a lot of vacancies, it's nothing that we repaired last year or 2 years ago, 3 years ago. In public housing, folks stay years, sometimes decades. So it just depends on when the people leave, the condition of the unit, and what it needs. And that's what the pricing that's coming in. When we do a major mod, for example, that it needs beyond the repair and maintenance, the pricing is coming around $300,000. That's when the unit needs a roof, or we need to do an ADA accessible, so we are able to, there are modifications to the unit. But to take a unit that's been vacated, bring it to all the standard that's necessary to conform to the law, safe, decent, and sanitary, the most recent proposals are about $85,000. In Maui, we got a proposal last week or so. It was around $92,000 per unit.
So my concern is that generally a landlord would do inspections to ensure that the tenant is keeping that particular property up to a livable standard. To me, when we're spending upwards of $80,000 a unit, it's not really livable standards that you're repairing. And so are you doing annual inspections of this unit and correcting deficiencies, or?
Absolutely. Every year we do inspection, at minimum one inspection a year. In addition, the federal government send their own inspectors once a year for what is called REAC inspection, and we continue that process. Remember, Representative, most of our units are over 50 years old. But yes, we do inspections, yearly inspections, at minimum.
And do you find deficiencies
Yes.
that you need to correct?
Yes, we do, and our maintenance staff take care of those deficiencies.
Okay, well, okay, thank you, Chair.
All right, Vice Chair. And then, go ahead, Rep. Martin, go ahead.
Sorry, another question for Hakeem. I'm just ignorant. Can you please tell me why we need the without regard to civil service law? What is the barrier with civil service law?
Thank you. Any regular repair and maintenance that's traditionally a civil service, we cannot contract it out without this exemption. So oftentimes, actually more often than none, our staff, limited staff that we have, cannot get to all those units, so they stay vacant. What we have done in the past, we have worked with UPW, and they allowed us to contract some of those units just so we can bring them, so we can house these folks. In addition, we are 90% federally funded, and our funding, it depends on occupied units. So the federal government takes those units and calculate, and that's how we get our funding. And out of all the staff that we have, about 300 or so staff, only one position that's A-funded. The rest come from those sources. So the union recognized the need, and they flew with us to all the islands and talked to their staff and explained to them why they were allowing us to do that. And at the end of the day, our staff are working full-time and offered overtime, but those units that become vacant, this exemption will help, so we can get into them, get them fixed, and continue the process.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair. Rep. Ebza, go ahead.
Thanks for your testimony.
Thank you.
The bill mentions 255 units, and then you had mentioned 262, I think. Where did either of those figures come from? Is that like the total number of vacant units in need of
Thank you.
repair?
It depends on when we're asked how many vacant units. It's a moving target. It changes actually daily. So the estimation that we have is based on that, and it varies. It will not be unusual, or in fact it'll be expected, that if we ask, let's say 2 weeks from now, what's the vacant units, that number could go higher or lower depending on how many people vacated and how many units we were able to fix.
Okay, so but it is referring in general to the total number of vacant units.
That is correct. That is correct.
And then your testimony mentions a total need of $800 million.
That is the backlog. If we are to take all the units that we have, and that's 6,196 units, once we reach a certain threshold of repair, we're required by federal law to make them all ADA compliance and others, and we have large properties. To make ADA routes and to make the units compliant with all the existing laws, that price tag is based on our consultant that did the study. That's the number that we're looking at.
Okay, thanks. And then you had mentioned, I think, sounded like previous years was more in the range of $10 million for bringing these units up to code or livable standards. Was there a surge of vacancies this year? Is that why the amount has gone up, or is it repair costs have gone up?
It's kind of consistent. The number, we used to have about 700 or so vacancies. That number just really varies each year. And the appropriation that we get, our ask is always much greater. For this session, for example, we ask for 90-something, but there are competing priorities. So by the time it gets to the legislature, that number is reduced. So what we do, we just take the amount of money that we have, and we start with health and safety first, anything that needs, and start going down that route.
I see. So then in previous years, if you're only getting $10 million, does that mean that you weren't able to do the full repairs that you were hoping?
100%. We prioritize.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Vice Chair, go ahead.
So Hakeem, the 262 units, are these units that you cannot put people back into, or are these units that you're just identifying that could need repairs, or are these the ones sitting vacant? And sorry, I'll let you go before I ask more.
No, thank you. Any unit that's vacant, we cannot put a family unless if it's safe, decent, and sanitary. This is by law.
Okay.
So once a family vacate, we go assess and see what does it need. If it's something simple that we can turn very quickly, our staff go there. If not, we'll hire someone. But we cannot put a family in it until the repairs are completed and can pass what is called REAC inspection by the federal government.
Okay, so the 262, are those all the units you have that are vacant right now, or are there other units vacant?
As of our testimony date, that was the amount of units that we have vacant
Okay.
and that we cannot get to.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Rapunishi, go ahead.
Yeah, I have couple of follow-up questions. So,
Sure.
if you have this agreement with UPW in being able to contract out, why do you need this provision in the bill?
Okay, as I stated in testimony, we had previously, about a year and a half or 2 years ago, and they only allow us a year at a time. If we are to execute this, we do need that exemption.
So you haven't had discussions with them
About this bill, no.
about this year or upcoming year?
No, we have not made that request.
So why do we need this then, if you don't know if they'll agree or not?
In case if they say no,
They what?
in case if they say no, that will be one reason.
So do they know about this bill and this provision?
I don't know.
Okay.
If the question, if we contacted them about this bill, we have not.
Okay. Follow up?
Go ahead.
So, I remember when I first got in, you guys came to the legislature and asked to establish these triage groups with cross-training. And so, what is the status of that?
Thank you. We have done so, and we have them. And we do dispatch them to a variety of different projects. There is a tremendous amount of work. When you have approximately $800 million of backlog, our staff are worked and sometimes even overworked. We offer overtime to these folks, which they do. But we did establish a multi-skilled labor, and they're doing a great job, and they're working every day.
So why haven't you come to the legislature for ask for more staffing?
We have in the past, yes.
You have?
Yes.
Have you asked this year?
This year we have not.
Have you asked last year?
Did we ask last year? Yes.
How much did you ask for? How many positions?
I can get back to you on that, but we did ask.
I mean, it would seem that it's more costly to contract out to people than it would be to have your triage staff And my concern is if you got 255 units that have become vacant and cannot be re-rented out because of health and safety, that means that during your inspections, you're not identifying problems that would lead to units not being able to be rented if they're vacated. So I have a real concern that, this process, you're ignoring issues that come up with these units until somebody vacates the unit. And then now we're spending huge amounts of money to make corrections. And then we're contracting out with contractors that, all the contractors are busy, as far as I know, on Hawaii Island. And so they're charging, prime costs for repairs, especially renovations,
Yeah.
And, you're not coming annually to fulfill your need for more manpower, in order for you to do it yourself.
Representative, first of all, we're not ignoring anything that needs to be repaired. We do repair it. We're required by law, by federal law, to do that. And inspections that come in from the federal government demonstrate that. In addition, we have 86 vacancies right now that we've been trying, and regular and continuous recruitment. It's not easy to find these kind of folks to come and work for us. It's just with the existing positions that we have, there are vacancies, and that's why the legislature every year sometimes they try to take some of those vacancies. But we did ask for positions. If the legislature gave us all the positions that we need, we certainly would not have to contract the additional work. And the statement is 100% correct, and we'll welcome that.
Well, you have to ask.
We have in the past, and next year we'll go ahead and ask some more, for sure.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Right. Thank you, Rep. Onishi. Vice Chair, you have anything else?
Yeah, last question.
Yes.
What do you spend the rents on if you're asking for all of this repair and maintenance money?
Thank you. On repairs and other repairs, for example, what we've asked here, 262 units. At any given year, we have about 500 units. So the operation of the properties, the PHSs, the folks who put the application branch, all of that, the money is spent there.
Okay. Are the rent? I assume the rents are statutorily set by the federal government or by state law, and we're charging the maximum amount. Is that-
30%. The tenants cannot pay more than 30% of the rent. So if they pay zero, the rent is zero. And in some cases, we give them money so they can pay for the utilities.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
All right, members, any other questions? Very good, robust discussion.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you being here. All right, moving on. SB 898 relating to kupuna housing. This would do a temporary state rent supplement program and some wraparound services. Vice Chair for the testimony.
Hakeem, HPHA again. Sorry.
Hide. Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand in strong support of this measure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. DOH, Executive Office of Aging.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Carolyn Kadirao, Director of the Executive Office on Aging, and we will stand on our testimony in support of Senate Bill 898 SD2 for the kupuna housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Rainbow Family 808. AARP. Archer, are you still here?
Good morning. Yes, AARP stands in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Catholic Charities Hawaii.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Betty Lou Larson for Catholic Charities Hawaii. You have a written testimony, but I just want to emphasize that we are very concerned about the elderly. More elderly are coming to us, and basically, for housing, it's an economic need. You know, they just can't meet the rents. We have many long-term renters who are coming back to us who are facing eviction or will be evicted because they just can't pay the increased rents. We have people who've worked all their life, like the 81-year-old lady who became homeless because she couldn't work anymore. and she's never asked for help before. So these are the kind of people that we're facing. So we really support anything you can do to help HPHA create this program fast, because 6 months is 6 months of people who might fall into homelessness, or 6 months of trauma, and that impacts on their health so greatly. Again, we don't want to see seniors institutionalized because their health deteriorates so much, and neither do they. They want to remain in the community and want to have stable housing. So thank you very much for hearing this bill.
Thank you. Kirby Shaw, Disability Communication Access Board. No? There are a bunch of individuals who submitted testimony in support. Any of those individuals on in-person or Zoom want to testify? Seeing none, are there any other individuals that wish to testify on this matter? SB 898. Chair, seeing none.
Seeing none, members, any questions? 898. All right, seeing none, let's move on. SB 1442 relating to Ohana Zones. This is the Ohana Zones vehicle for funding and some other administrative items. Vice Chair for the testimony.
Director Betts, Department of Human Services.
Good morning, Chair Hashimoto, Vice Chair Ayu, and members. My name is Scott Morishige. I'm the Division Administrator for the Benefit, Employment, and Support Services Division on behalf of DHS and our Director, Kathy Betts. The department stands on our testimony in support and defers to the Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness. We also wanted to note that our executive budget request includes $15 million for both years of the biennium for the Coordinator's Office to continue the Ohana Zones pilot, and the House Draft 1 includes $15 million for fiscal year 24 only. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. James Koshiba.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, James Koshiba, Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness. I'd like to stand on my written testimony in support, but offer one additional comment that didn't make it into the written testimony. With regard to Section 3, as I said in my written testimony, support the inclusion of funds for Ohana Zone construction and capital improvements, defer to the Department of Budget and Finance on the use of GO bonds to generate these funds. But I wanted to add one thing to my comments on Section 3, and that is, should CIP funding for Ohana Zone construction be approved, I would suggest that these projects be provided with the same types of incentives offered to other affordable housing projects. For example, the GET exemption on construction expenses that's provided under HRS 201H-36. These projects are going to be creating housing and space for people at the very bottom of the income scale, and housing that is therefore more affordable than even the sort of typical affordable housing projects, and they should be provided with the same incentives and supports we offer to those types of projects. Thank you.
Audrey Suga Nakagawa on Zoom.
Again, ARP stands on our testimonies and support. Thank you.
Thank you. Laura Thielen on Zoom. Partners in Care. Not here. Family Promise of Hawaii. Opportunity Youth Action Hawaii. Linda Dorset in support. Mark Copel in support. Will Karen in support. Kevin Johnson in support. Hawaii State Council on Mental Health in support. Andrew Kagemoto in support. Any others wishing to testify on this matter? SB 1442. Go ahead.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair of the committee, Angela Melody Young, testifying in strong support on behalf of CARES. So, of course, I'd like to, applaud the really amazing leaders there that, led the initiatives for the housing and the homelessness, and also, so Ohana Zones is funded contracts with like DHS, DOH, HHFDC, and it has helped 5,000 individuals and has placed about 1,300 individuals into permanent housing. And so it is a very worthy investment. And but the thing is, there was also talk at the city during the budget hearing that they we're hoping to try to collaborate with the state in any way that they can. So the city council really was eager to hear about Ohana zones. And also in the State of the City address last week, they announced that they will be trying to collaborate with the state to provide city properties for villages. And they're investing $1 million in crisis outreach response engagement to upgrade their fleet. So, this kind of assistance for homelessness is the complete opposite of the law enforcement. So it's like care instead of punishment. And because previously when they were asking HPD to respond to all the homeless concerns, it's like you're asking a Boy Scout to do a nurse's job. So, core, kahale, ohana zones, programs and support services focused on providing care are solutions to transform the homeless situation. And the village concept is support provided through the community with each member supporting each other. And a lot of times we don't really hear, beyond the technical language, like we're going to access the American Rescue Plan Act to build transitional housing, right? We don't hear the mental health aspect, that there's going to be counseling provided, and also, restorative strategies to give the homelessness
Can you wrap
support.
it up? We have a 2-minute time limit in this committee.
Yes, of course. So, the idea of the care and the support services is a really good thing to support. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Any other individuals wishing to testify on this matter? Seeing none, Chair.
Right. Members, any questions? Ohana zones. All right. Chair actually has a question. Let's see. Maybe let's bring up DHS. Scott, you want to come up real quick? This is just in relation to the position. I'm trying to figure out what to do with the 1 FTE, because I know the governor's office you don't have to enable positions in the gov's office, but when is the transition going to happen to DHS? Do you know? Because if we transition it over and we give them an FTE, we probably need a position, right?
Well, I would defer to the governor's coordinator, but as far as the act that passed last session, the coordinator's office has been established. It has its own program ID as an attached agency to DHS. I believe in the bill right now, the position is to the office of the governor, and I believe the coordinator's testimony is asking that language be inserted to allow that position potentially to be moved to whatever department the Ohana Zone funds may be allocated to, because I believe the governor has ability to allocate funding to different executive branch agencies.
So my only concern with that is that you can move the money, but if you don't have the FTE, then you can't create the position. So I guess, do we need to put in the FTE, or do you believe that if we just leave it without the FTE, it should be fine?
I would defer to the coordinator on that, as he's the lead for this particular initiative.
Okay. James, you want to come up?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure myself. This might be a question for the AG's office. But my sense is you would need both the FTE and the funds, and if the FTE can be transferable, and again, I think that's a more a legal question than a kind of subject matter question. That would be the ideal, and that was the intent of my suggested language at the end of my testimony, was that the position be transferable.
Okay.
Yep.
Why don't we look into that? We'll keep it moving, and then we'll fix it later on.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Members, any other questions? All right, moving on. We are moving to SB 930, relating to the Residential Landlord Tenant Code. This is relating to application screening fees. Vice Chair.
DCCA. Mana.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. Mana Moriarty with the Office of Consumer Protection. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. We are in support of the bill. We're aware that for a long time now we've received reports of abuses of this application screening fee, collections well in excess of what's necessary to actually process the screening and rent out the property. We think this measure appropriately addresses these abuses, and we'd encourage you to pass it on to the next committee for consideration.
Thank you. Legal Aid of Hawaii.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Nick Severson, Managing Attorney of the Housing and Consumer Unit at the Legal Aid Society of Hawaii. We stand on the written testimony that we previously submitted, but are happy to answer any questions that the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Hawaii Dream Realty LLC on Zoom in opposition.
Here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Teresa Harden. I own Hawaii Dream Realty LLC, and I am testifying to oppose this bill in its entirety. It's interesting that the version that we're looking at now says to delete the $25 application screening fee and insert a blank amount. And then down number 3 and 4 say that to make it an effective date down the road, and 4 make technical, non-substantiated amendments for the purpose of clarity and consistency. So if you insert a blank, that's only for later for you to add an amount there. So I oppose this bill in its entirety, and I'd like the opportunity to explain why. My company, first of all, we don't abuse anything. We work very hard to do right by our tenants and our owners for the care of their properties. The tenant, when they apply, my system, we use online services, and my system, when they apply for the property, I pre-screen the application when it comes in. Usually, if I have received a number of applicants, then I usually move forward with the credit process part of it only with one at a time, because I don't want anyone to pay the $30 fee per adult if they're not in the primary position. Now, I have had situations where husband and wife, let's say as an example, they both apply, and it is required, all adults have to apply, and they are considered for the qualifications. Now, if one person can meet the qualifications and the credit, then that might be something I make an exception on. But usually, most cases, I have both or all adults apply. They have to file for the credit. My credit report actually includes a background criminal report and an eviction check. So the $30 fee that they pay when they authorize the credit to be pulled in their name, they pay that directly. If they don't want to move forward with the application process, many times people don't, or they don't want to run a criminal background check, whatever the case may be. They don't continue. They don't pay a fee if they don't want to continue with the process. I think it's very fair to do it that way. If I have applications come back and the credit reporting and everything, and I'm approving an applicant, there have been times that those applicants maybe found something else, or they preferred a different unit, they applied for multiple, and they end up selecting a different unit. So in those cases, the fee that they paid, if they choose not to take the apartment after they've been approved, they spent that money for that process, but that was their doing. That was not something that they wanted to move forward. If the case is that I approved someone and then they did not move forward with signing the application. I'm sorry?
Can you wrap up for us, please?
Yeah, so if they didn't approve the application, I would then move to the second applicant, most qualified applicant, and then start that process over. So there absolutely is an abuse from my company and probably most of the property management companies. But my problem is that this bill should be deleted and stopped completely, because the application fee is $30. I don't set that. They get a receipt when they submit it through the system and they authorize it, and I don't set those fees at all. My company, we don't charge cash. We don't charge a showing fee.
Okay.
So there's a number of different things there.
Appreciate your input.
Yes, but this bill should not move forward.
Got it.
That is my testimony.
Thank you, Teresa. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Where am I? Will Karen, individual with comments. Lindsay Garcia, Hawaii Realtors. Hello.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Lindsay Garcia from the Hawaii Association of Realtors. So we appreciate the intent of this bill and provide suggested amendments, which is in our written testimony. So first of all, under the Federal Fair Housing Law, housing providers may not discriminate against different applicants. The housing provider is required to document that each applicant was treated the same and screened by the same standards. An application consists of all prospective tenants in a household who all have an impact on the space that they are renting. We would therefore believe that all adult applicants must therefore be screened. And this is really to ensure a fair evaluation process for all prospective tenants that is documented. Additionally, we would also note that the costs for screening reports vary and change over time. Bulk reports may be slightly cheaper. As such, we respectfully recommend that amount is not included in statute. Bulk reports are not itemized, so a receipt may not always be possible as well. Finally, these screening reports are generally marked confidential and not allowed to be shared by a housing provider or property manager, so providing a copy of the screening reports may also not be feasible. We have provided suggested amendments in our written testimony that address all of these concerns. As always, we ask that if this measure is to move forward, that it have a November effective date to allow us time to update relevant standard forms that we provide for the entire industry. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify on this matter? SB 930. Go ahead. Catholic Charities.
Aloha, I'm Betty Lou Larson representing Catholic Charities, and we have not been testifying on this bill, but we have testified on similar bills in the past. And I just want to make a comment that I think what the important point to us is to charge an application fee at the time an application is processed. In our experience, many landlords charge up front when you first put it in. And as this landlord said, many of them will not be considered. They'll be screened out because you have 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 applications. And so we feel it is fair at the time they're actually being considered. You're going to run a criminal check, other things, and at that time they're being processed, considered, then they are willing to pay an application fee. And so that's very fair. But to have everyone pay and lose that money and applying, for 10, you have to apply for 10 or 20 places. If that's $30 or $50, that's a lot of money out of your pocket before you may even be considered for a unit. So we feel that particular part is really, and that's our experience, that would be a more effective way at processing. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify on this matter? SB 930. Chair, seeing none.
Members, any questions?
Chair?
Okay, we'll go with Rep. Onishi, Martin, then we'll come to you, Vice Chair. Go ahead, Rep. Onishi.
Yeah, for DCCA. So I noticed in your testimony that you are opposed to having checking on multiple adult members in a family. So do you think it's important that the landlord know that a potential tenant in the unit has been convicted of selling drugs out of that property, out of the previous property?
Rep. Onishi, I think what you're getting at speaks to the question of discrimination under the fair housing laws. And so I would have to go back and check whether discrimination based on the basis of a previous conviction for selling drugs from a specific property is something that can be considered under fair housing. I'd also invite the opinion of the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission on that.
But you are aware that the laws can be enforced on the landlord if the landlord knows that a tenant is selling drugs out of their house, and their house can be, taken into custody?
Personally, I'm not aware, but I would hope that's the case, because we don't want our landlords in the state, turning a blind eye to knowing illegal behavior coming out of the properties that they rent.
So do you think that a landlord not knowing that a tenant has sold drugs out of previous rental units is germane to the fact that they could lose their home or lose their property?
A landlord not knowing that somebody has sold drugs out of the property, again, I'm just not sure how we would square that with the fair housing provisions under federal law and under state law. I can see the area of concern.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right, Rep. Martin.
This is for Hawaii Realtors. In your testimony, you want to have every person over 18 screened,
Yes.
even if the person paying for the rent may be one household member.
Yes.
So why is that?
So that, it kind of goes to, I believe, the point that was being made a little earlier, that all tenants that live in the property impact that space, and that the landlord should be able to know all of the adults and their background in order to rent to that particular application. We believe an application consists of all individuals that would be living in that space.
So it's less about credit and more about criminal activities, like Rep. Onishi was suggesting, something like that?
Yes, so screening reports can include not only credit reports, but also criminal background checks, eviction history, or other public records. Thank you.
Okay. Vice Chair?
Maybe for DCC and then maybe for legal aid after, but I'm interested in the comments that I think her name was Teresa. Teresa was making. So if my rental application says you must go to this website and send me your information, and there's a fee associated, is that the same fee as if the landlord was collecting it themselves, or is that a separate fee?
I think your question would be best addressed to our previous testifier. I could see how somebody could charge a fee through a website and then charge a secondary subsequent fee. And what we're trying to do in this measure is to prohibit abuses of the process where a fee is collected, but it's not actually going towards renting out the property. The primary example of that is, as one of our testifiers mentioned, you've got 20 applicants and only 2 are seriously being considered, and yet the agent, the landlord's agent, is going to charge all 20 upfront a fee that is not seriously being put towards the rental of the property. So you've got really 18 fees that are being paid for no reason, and potentially these people applying for properties are in a situation where they cannot just afford to be paying out $30, $25, $50 fees for every property that they're trying to get into.
I guess my question is more, if the landlord never sees the money, does that somehow get around this statute, or is that contemplated here?
Well, it shouldn't get around the statute because the landlord's agent should be subject to the statute. And in cases where the property manager is operating on behalf of the landlord, that's what we want to be addressed.
I don't think that really answers my question. So if I have an application and I say you must go to this website, and get registered and give me the confirmation and deliver it with your application before I will consider you, and that third-party website collects a fee, and I never see the fee, but I won't process your application until you get through that process. Is that contemplated here, or is that somehow get around what's the application fee?
If the question is, you're saying,
Ask
does
it
it fall
to
within
me.
the intent?
Hold on, Teresa. I just want to know
Oh, I
what
apologize.
his opinion is, please.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Please mute her. Go ahead, DCC.
The intent, as we understand it, is that falls within the prescribed conduct here.
Okay, thank you. Legal aid, same question if you have an opinion about.
Yes, I think it would fall under the statute. I mean, I think the way that we see application fees typically play out, and I know that different landlords do things differently, obviously, is they'll collect a fee up front and then pay for that on the back end, right? So I think sometimes this is where you see the discrepancy of perhaps the application fee is $75 or whatever it may be. These screening fees are costing $25, $30, whatever. So in addition to the problem that was outlined by the DCCA in terms of collecting extensive applications for, a unit where maybe only a few applicants are being considered, you have application fees being collected in excess of what is actually needed to run the background
Okay,
checks. or
Let's
credit
get
checks.
past the excess part, and all I'm saying is you gotta go to this website and you gotta pay what they're charging, and you give me the confirmation when you're done with, going through the website, and that's I only accept this service from this website, and there's no the website charges what they charge. I'm not seeing any of the money, is that?
It would seem that if the landlord is conditioning consideration for a rental on a paying of that fee, that would be contemplated by this.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And then last question for Catholic Charities. Explain how you have so many applicants, but then you only really process applications for. How do you get from 50 applications to processing one or two without paying any kind of fee?
Okay, well, I'm not a landlord,
Okay,
but
yeah.
The way I understand the system is, our staff maybe would help people, and as we say to a senior, you can't just apply for one or two places because, your chances are low. So you apply for a place, but knowing that, these days rentals are very in demand, and you need something's available right now, so it's not affordable housing with a 1-year wait. You're applying, and there's probably 20 other people applying. So what we would like to see is the applications go in, okay, and as the landlord said, then they start screening. Is the income eligible? Is it even within their, what they would want to see?
So when you talk about the screening, you're just talking about the application, reviewing the
Well,
application
yeah,
itself.
reviewing. So
Okay.
I would just say reviewing the application. Then they're going to process it. They're going to send it to, criminal check, landlord checks, those things. Now, these are the 3 people that they're really interested in. They say, okay, these are the 3 that I think might be possibilities. And then if those 3 don't work out, maybe go to 3 more.
Okay.
But at that point, the person is willing to pay a fee because they're being considered for an actual unit.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. DCCA, real quick. So with that, does this piece of legislation as written contemplate that scenario? Because it doesn't sound like we're trying to limit when it's processed, right? Or do you believe it does cover that?
Yeah, I thank you for pointing out that issue, because we don't in this measure mandate when applications have to be processed. That's something that may need to be revisited in order to effectively address the issue. I can see how this is a measure, as drafted, it will really help to avoid the situations that we want to correct the abuses. But there may be some gap there in coverage.
So I guess the other question too is, when you hear what the realtors are saying about they want to protect their assets, what is your thoughts from DCCA? Because I know it's clear in your testimony you only want to be able to screen. We only have to be able to have 1 screening fee per application. Are you not worried about, if they're not able to check, is that not your concern, or what do you say to that in terms of how we should address that issue?
I would say that they've taken one position, which is that every adult needs to be screened, regardless of whether they're signing the lease and obligated on the property or not.
Right.
That simply does not account for the situation where you have 1 or 2 individuals on the lease who are living at a property with their dependent children, right? Should those dependent children who are not obligated under the lease also be subject to screening and background checks? We believe the answer is no. They should not also be subject to screening and background checks because they're not being obligated under the lease. They're not under a contractual relationship with the landlord.
Okay, so it would be anyone who contributes funds then you feel should be screened?
In our testimony, we've taken the position that solely 1 applicant should be screened, subject to screening and background checks. We'd be open to consideration of an amendment, where you have anybody who's a party to the lease could be subject to that. If you're applying jointly with the spouse, for example, perhaps there's reason to include background checks of both husband and wife or civil union partners.
Okay. Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Doesn't the standard rental agreement form require the landlord's consent to have other adults residing in the premises for the lease?
I apologize, I don't know the answer to that
Okay.
question.
I'll ask Lindsay then.
Mm.
Lindsay, on your guys' standard form lease, doesn't it require the consent of the landlord to?
Thank you for that question. Apologies, I'm trying to pull out
I
the,
think it does, but I
the
haven't
actual
looked at
form.
this form in a while.
Yes, sorry, we have a lot of forms, which is also why I asked for the delayed implementation date. But, yes, so your question has to do with the consent
Yeah,
of tenants.
Even if they're not paying for the rent, aren't they still, doesn't the landlord still need to consent to anyone over 18?
It might be best if I get
Okay.
back to you so that I have time to look at it, but
Okay.
that's a very good question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, any other questions? Raponishi,
Yeah,
go
I have a
ahead.
question, DCCA.
Maybe I might as well just stay.
So in your testimony, you're specifying that there should be the $25 limit
Mhm.
on one applicant only. So given the previous testimony in previous hearings, and the testimony today about the costs, and the provisions in the bill that the landlord has to provide a receipt for expenses and a refund of any monies that is not spent, why are you proposing a limit on $25?
We're aware that there are products out there, screening products, including criminal background checks, that are commercially available for well under $25. If landlords choose not to use those products, then they are buying a product that is above the rate which we would recommend be the cap. That's where we are.
So why isn't in your testimony you're recommending sources for these screenings? If you know what the prices are.
I'm sorry, the state would not recommend a referral to any private entity
So
to
y-
provide information to the
Okay,
public.
but you are quasi setting that requirement by asking for the cap.
We were recommending that the legislature consider our view that there should be a cap on those expenses because we are aware of commercially available products that provide this information at a price well under what our previous testifier mentioned.
But that's not in your testimony.
That's my testimony to you in answer to your question.
Right.
Which is outside the
Right.
written testimony,
But I'm
correct?
trying to figure out why you justified the $25 given all of the previous testimony and the testimony today about costs.
I hope I
And the
was-
provisions of the bill, right, which requires a receipt for the costs and also refund of excess fees collected for these checks.
I hope I was able to address that question, but our consideration is based on the nature of the commercially available screening and background products out there.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Raponishi. Any other questions? All right, I think we have gone through this enough, and so we will move on to SB 1357, relating to affordable housing on Hawaiian homelands. This is their housing credits. Vice Chair for the testimony.
DHHL in support.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Ovao Oriana Leao. DHHL is Nahaza Government Relations Program Specialist. The department stands on its written testimony and support, and I'm available for questions. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Sandy Wong, Doling Company, on Zoom? Not here. Anyone else wishing to testify on this matter? SB 1357. Seeing none, Chair.
Members, any questions? SB 1357. All right, seeing none. Last item relating to real property transactions. SB 395. Vice Chair.
Lindsay, don't sit down. You're first.
Good morning again, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Lindsay Garcia for the Hawaii Association of Realtors. So we appreciate the intent of this bill, but we do have a comment. We don't necessarily believe that this measure may be necessary. U.S. Postal Service delivery is already considered a material fact, and as such is on our seller's real property disclosure form. On the form, there are options for the seller to indicate if the mail delivery is either P.O. box, community cluster, individual curbside box, or other, with a space for the seller to describe the situation of that property. Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew Kagemoto, individual in support. Anyone else wish to testify on this matter? SB 395. Chair Singh.
All right, members, any questions on this matter?
I have a question for Lindsay.
All right.
Is that mandatory that they fill that out, or is
Yes.
that optional? Okay, that was it.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we're going to recess for decision making. All right, members, we're calling back our 9:30 hearing we're in here, room 312 still yet, and we're going to go into decision making. So SB 340 relating to housing. So we are going to actually delete on page 1, line 6 to 7, the 255 units. We just don't really want to specify since it's such a moving target. We're actually going to put that into the committee report, and we're just going to say that as of today, the current vacancy is 262 units that are unmet in repairs. So that we have to make that clear because there is more repairs that need to be done, but at least some of them are covered under what they have already. We're also going to put in the committee report that it's about $85,000 per unit to upgrade. So at least we can have an understanding going into conference of how we're going to calculate this eventual number and how many units we're going to get. We're going to defect the effective date to June 30th, 3000, and allow staff to make technical and non-substantive revisions. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on SB 340, SD2, Chair elects to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Eslin?
Aye.
Representative Keela is excused. Representative Kitagawa?
Aye.
Representative Martin?
Aye.
Representative Onishi?
Aye.
Representative Todd?
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto?
Aye.
Chair, your measure is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to SB 898 relating to Kupuna housing. So since this is a pilot program, we want to get this off the ground fairly quickly. I think when it was originally introduced, there was a procurement exemption and it got removed along the way. So I think we want to add that back in so we can get the provider on board fairly quickly. And I don't think the intent is to always, get exempt procurement, but I think just to get it off the ground, we need that procurement exemption. So we're going to amend Section 2D on page 4, so it'll read, the Hawaii Public Housing Authority shall be exempt from Chapter 103D in selecting a qualified nonprofit organization to administer the long-term rental assistance program for Kupuna and shall, without regard to Chapter 91, establish rules and qualification standards for participants of the long-term rental assistance pilot program. So the other part was already there. We're just adding to that. We're going to defect the effective date to June 30th, 3000, and allow staff to make technical and non-substantive revisions. Members, any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on SB 898 SD2, Chair elects to pass with amendments. Noting the presence of all members except Representative Kilo, who will be excused for the remainder of this agenda. Are there any members choosing to vote no with reservations? Seeing none, Chair, your measure is adopted.
All right, moving on to SB 1442 relating to Ohana zones. We are going to take the requested amendment from the Governor's Homeless Coordinator in Section 1 to allow them to designate an executive branch department or agency for the purpose of implementing Ohana zone's capital improvement funds for the position. We're also going to make sure we add in a 1 FTE just in case that they need that position when they move it to a non-governor's office department, because I don't think the governor follows any FTE restrictions. We also are going to convert Section 3, which is capital improvement projects, to just a cash appropriations, because typically Ohana zone projects aren't possibly the life of a bond, so we probably just need to use cash for any of those improvements. And then we're going to take the request from the homeless coordinator to add in a Section 4 to allow them to qualify under, I'll just read it. The Ohana Zones Pilot Program shall be a government assistance program under Section 201H 36A2 Hawaii Revised Statutes, provided that a regulatory agreement for a minimum term of 10 years shall be required under Section 201H 36B. If using bond funds, Hawaii Revised Statute for facilities constructed for Ohana Zone Pilot Program capital improvement projects authorized by Section 3. So that's a Section 4. We're going to move the numbers down. We know we're not using the capital improvement projects, but if we do put it back, we need that 10-year provision for bonding purposes, so we may take that out later, but we just want to make that note. We're going to defect the effective date to June 30th, 3000, and allow staff to make technical and non-substantive revisions. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? So that's a GET exemption, right? That the last part I said. Right? I share for the vote.
Members voting on SB 1442 SD2, Chair elects to pass with amendments. Are there any members choosing to vote no with reservations? Chair, measures adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to SB 930. I think we like the robust discussion. I think there was a lot of back and forth, and I think everyone brings up good points, and so I don't know where we're going to stand at this point in terms of making substantial changes. So we're just going to go back to the HB 644 HD1, which this committee passed out previously, and place it into this bill. So essentially, what the provision of that is, essentially we're only going to allow screening for those who are 18 and above. I think the other big thing is we're removing a specific amount. I think this committee has never liked putting a specific amount in HRS because you have to come back every time, but it does include that you only can charge what the cost is, so you can't make additional money, so you're going to have to refund anything in excess. So again, that's HB 644 HD1. We're placing that into this. We're going to also defect the effective date to June 30th, 3000, which I believe the HD1 had, but we'll just state that for the record. Allow staff to make technical and non-substantive revisions, and in the HD1 of 644, there is a delayed implementation for educational purposes. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? Fri Martin.
I have a question. So I think in the HB, it was 18 plus who also contribute to that.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Good memory.
Chair?
Rep. Onishi.
Yes, I'd like a ruling on a conflict of
Okay,
interest.
go ahead.
So my wife's family have rental property.
Okay, no conflict, because this applies to everyone, not special legislation, but thank you for disclosing that. Members, any other questions, comments, concerns? Representative?
I need a ruling on a conflict too. I have a rental property.
Okay, no conflict, thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on SB 930 SD1, Chair elects to pass with amendments. Are there any members choosing to vote no with reservations? Chair, your measure is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to SB 1357, relating to affordable housing on Hawaiian homelands. We're going to keep this moving, so we'll just defect the effective date to June 30th, 3000, and allow staff to make technical and non-substantive revisions. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? We passed the version out of this in our comprehensive bill, but this is all we got from the Senate. It passed, moved over first. We are going to keep our commitment to keep it moving. Right? Vice Chair, for the vote.
Members voting on SB 1357 SD1, Chair elects to pass with amendments. Are there any members choosing to vote no? With reservations, Chair measures adopted.
Right, last measure, SB 395, relating to real property transactions. I know the realtors make a really good point. I don't know if this is a Hawaii Island only issue, but we'll keep it moving for the introducer. We're just going to defect the effective date to June 30th, 3000, and allow staff to make technical and non-substantive revisions. Members, any questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair, for the vote.
Members voting on SB 395 SD1, Chair elects to pass with amendments. Are there any members choosing to vote no? With reservations?
Reservations.
Reservations from Representative Onishi. Anyone else? Chair, your measure is adopted.
Thank you, members. This is all of our doubles that we are hearing for this session. So next week we have joints, and then we also do some rezos. So for now we are adjourned. Thank you.